Hello, Shavua Tov. Can't speak. Shavua Tov, and welcome back to another weekly Parsha reading. We're on a really juicy, exciting Parsha, Parashat Beshalach, with the splitting of the Red Sea and all sorts of divine miracles. So I'm excited to get into this one. I think I'm starting to give up on, at least temporarily, on my little introductions and having a nice little thing to read beforehand. But nonetheless, I'm still moving forward, and I hope you enjoy this reading. I'm going to dive right into Parashat Beshalach. When Pharaoh sent the people away, God did not lead them through the land of the Philistines because it was too close. This is because God said, "When the people see a war, they may regret leaving and return to Egypt." God led the people on a roundabout route through the desert to the Sea of Reeds. The children of Israel were armed when they went up out of Egypt. Moshe took Joseph's bones with him because he, Joseph, had made his brothers swear that they would make their children swear to do so, saying, "God will surely remember you, and you shall bring up my bones from here with you." On the second day, they traveled from Sukkot, and they encamped in Etam, at the edge of the desert. God went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to guide them along their route, and at night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel day and night. He did not move away the pillar of cloud by day until the pillar of fire was fully illuminated, nor did he move the pillar of fire at night from before the people until the pillar of cloud had been risen fully. God spoke to Moshe, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, and let them turn back in order to confuse Pharaoh and encamp in front of the mouth of the rocks, Pitom, between Migdol and the sea. You should encamp opposite the Egyptian deity Abal Zephon by the sea in order to confuse the Egyptians further. Pharaoh will say about the children of Israel, 'They are trapped in the land, the desert has closed in upon them.' I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. I will be glorified through wreaking vengeance on Pharaoh and his whole army, and Egypt will know that I am God." The children of Israel did so as they had been commanded. On the fourth day, it was reported to the king of Egypt that the people had fled. Pharaoh and his servants had a change of heart towards the people, and they said, "What have we done, that we have sent away Israel from serving us?" So he harnessed his chariot and persuaded his people to come with him. He took 600 select chariots and all the remaining chariots of Egypt, with officers over them all. God hardened the heart of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, because he was having second thoughts, and he chased after the children of Israel. The children of Israel were going out triumphantly. The Egyptians chased after them and overtook them while they were encamped by the sea. Every horse of Pharaoh's chariots, his horsemen, and his army were there by the mouth of the rocks, opposite Baal Zephon. Pharaoh advanced ahead of his troops. The children of Israel raised their eyes and looked. The Egyptians were advancing after them in total unity. They were very frightened, so the children of Israel cried out to God. They said to Moshe, "Is it because there was a shortage of graves in Egypt that you took us to die in the desert? What is this that you have done to us in taking us out of Egypt? Aren't these the words that we spoke to you in Egypt, saying, 'Leave us alone, and we will serve the Egyptians, because we would rather serve the Egyptians than die in the desert?'" Moshe said to the people, "Don't be afraid. Stand firm and see God's salvation that he will perform for you today. You may be seeing the Egyptians today, but you will never see them again. God will fight for you, but you must remain silent." Moshe stood up, praying to God, but God said to Moshe, "Why do you cry out to me? Speak to the children of Israel and tell them that all they have to do is travel. You should lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and split it. The children of Israel will come into the sea on dry land. Look, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they will come after them. I will be glorified by wreaking vengeance on Pharaoh, his entire army, his chariots, and his horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am God, when I will be glorified through wreaking vengeance on Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen." The angel of God who had been going in front of the Israelite camp moved and went behind them to intercept the arrows and catapult stones of Egypt. At night, the pillar of cloud moved away from in front of them and stood behind them, instead of disappearing as it usually did. It came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel. Thus the cloud and the darkness were there for the Egyptians, but the children of Israel had the pillar of fire, which illuminated the night. So one camp did not approach the other all night. Moshe stretched out his hand over the sea, and God moved the sea with a strong east wind throughout the entire night. He made the sea into dry land, and the waters split miraculously through the entire world. Then the children of Israel came into the sea on dry land. The water acted for them as a wall on their right hand and on their left. The Egyptians pursued and came after them. Every horse of Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen came into the sea. It was in the latter third of the night, towards the morning, that God looked down on the Egyptian camp with a pillar of cloud. He turned the seabed into mud, and with a pillar of fire he boiled the mud, causing the hooves of Egypt's horses to come off. He threw the Egyptian camp into confusion. He removed the wheels of their chariots with the fire, causing their passengers' limbs to dislocate, and he treated them harshly. Egypt said, "Let me run away from the Israelites, because God is fighting for them against the Egyptians." God said to Moshe, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, and the water will revert from being a wall into Egypt onto its chariots and horsemen." Moshe stretched out his hand over the sea, and in the early morning the sea returned to its original strength. The Egyptians were so confused that they fled towards the water. God stirred the Egyptians in the sea, mixing them up and down. The waters returned and covered the chariots, horsemen, and the entire army of Pharaoh, who were coming after them into the sea. Not even one of them remained. The children of Israel went on dry land in the midst of the sea, and the water was for them as a wall on their right and on their left. On that day, God saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians. God saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Israel saw the great might which God had enacted on the Egyptians, and the people feared God. They believed in God and in Moshe, his servant. Then, upon seeing the miracle, Moshe led the children of Israel in this song to God. They said as follows: "I will sing to God, for very exalted is he. Horse and its rider he cast into the sea. God's strength and vengeance were my salvation. This is my God, and I will build him a sanctuary, the God of my father, and I will exalt him. God is a master of war. God uses his name to do battle. He cast Pharaoh's chariots and army into the sea. His elite officers sank the mud of the sea of reeds, so that the deep waters would return and cover them. The average ones descended into the depths quickly like stone. Your right hand, O God, is most powerful and saves Israel. When Israel follows your will, your punishing left hand becomes like your right hand, O God, and constantly crushes the enemy. And that is merely your hand. But when you reveal your great majesty, then your opponents are devastated, and that is merely your majesty. But when you send forth your burning wrath, the most wicked of them are consumed like straw. With the angry breath of your nostrils, the waters were heaped up. The running waters stood erect like a wall. The deep waters congealed in the strongest part of the sea. The enemy said, "I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoils. My desire will be filled from them. I will draw my sword, my hand will impoverish them." You blew with your wind, the sea covered them. The decent ones sank like lead in the powerful waters. Who is like you among the mighty, O God? Who is like you, powerful in holiness, too awesome for praises, performer of wonders? You tilted your right hand, the earth swallowed them up. With your loving kindness, you led the people you redeemed. You led with your might to your holy abode. People heard, they trembled. A shudder seized the inhabitants of Peloshes. Then the chieftains of Edom were confounded. Trembling gripped the powerful men of Moab. All the inhabitants of Canaan melted. May dread fell upon the distant ones, and fear upon the near ones. At the greatness of your arm, may they become as still as stone, until your people cross over the stream of Arnon, O God. Until this nation that you have cherished crosses over the Jordan, you shall bring them and plant them on the mount of your heritage, a foundation for your dwelling place that you made, O God. The sanctuary, O God, which your hands founded. God will reign to all eternity. When Pharaoh's horse came with his chariots and his horsemen into the sea, God brought the waters of the sea back upon them, and the children of Israel walked on dry land in the midst of the sea. Miriam, who was a prophetess when she was Aaron's sister, even before Moshe was born, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women came out after her with tambourines and with dancing. Miriam called out to the women, leading them in the above song. Sing to God, for very exalted is he, a horse and its rider he cast into the sea. Moshe moved Israel on against their will from the Reed Sea, since they were busy collecting the spoils of Egypt. They went out into the desert of Shur. They traveled for 3 days in the desert without finding water. They came to Meorah, but they could not drink water from Meorah because it was bitter. Therefore they named it Meorah. The people complained to Moshe, saying, "What shall we drink?" He cried out to God, and God instructed him about a type of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became sweetened. There at Meorah, God gave them all the mitzvot of Shabbat and the red heifer, and the laws of monetary claims. He tested the people by denying them water to see how they would treat Moshe. He said, "If you will, accept upon yourself to listen to the voice of God, your God, and you will actually perform the commandments which are just in his eyes, and you observe his commandments with precision, and observe all his statutes which defy logic, Then all the sicknesses that I have placed upon Egypt, I will not place upon you, for I am God, your healer." They came to Elim, where there were 12 water fountains and 70 date palms. They encamped there by the water. They journeyed from Elim, and the entire community of the children of Israel came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after their departure from the land of Egypt. The entire community of the children of Israel complained against Moshe and against Aaron in the desert because their supplies of bread had run out. The children of Israel said to them, "If only we had died by the hand of God in the land of Egypt, when we sat by pots of meat, when we ate bread to our fill, for you have brought us into this desert to starve the entire congregation to death." God said to Moshe, "Look, I am going to rain down for you bread from heaven. Every day the people go out and gather what is needed for that day, so that I can test them whether or not they will follow my Torah. On Friday, when they are preparing what to bring home, they will gather the same amount as usual, but when they measure it, they will find that it is double the amount that they gather every day." Moshe and Aaron said to all the children of Israel, "In the evening you will realize that it is not us but God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, because he will deliver you quails to satisfy your desires, but he will not give it to you gracefully, since you asked for it improperly. In the morning you will see God's glory in the beautiful way that he delivers you bread, indicating that God has heard your properly delivered complaints against him about the lack of bread. But of what significance are we that you made the people complain against us?" Moshe said, "God will give you meat to eat in the evening and bread in the morning to fill up. God hears your complaints, which you are causing people to complain against him. But of what significance are we? Your complaints are not against us, but against God." Moshe said to Aaron, "Say to the entire community of the children of Israel, draw near before the cloud of glory where God will descend, for he has heard your complaints." When Aaron spoke to the entire community of the children of Israel, they turned toward the desert, and look, the glory of God appeared in the cloud. God spoke to Moshe, saying, "I have heard the complaints of the children of Israel. Speak to them and say, in the afternoon you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be full with bread, and you will know that I am God, your God." That evening, quails came up and covered the camp. In the morning, there was a layer of dew around the camp. The layer of dew evaporated, and look, on the surface of the desert, there was a fine substance as fine as frost, uncovered on the ground. When the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, "It is a prepared food," because they did not know what it was, to call it by its correct name. Moshe said to them, "It is a bread which God has given you to eat. This is what God has commanded. Each person should gather as much as he needs to eat, an omer measure for each person. You should take 1 omer for each person in your tent." The children of Israel did so. There were those that gathered too much and those that gathered too little. When they came home and measured it with an omer measure, they found that miraculously, whoever had gathered too much did not have more than an omer per person, and whoever gathered too little did not have less. Each one had gathered exactly what he needed to eat. Moshe said to them, Let no man leave any of it over until morning." Datan and Abiram did not listen to Moshe, and they left some of it over until morning. It became foul-smelling and bred worms, and Moshe became angry with them. They gathered it in morning by morning, according to what each person could eat. When the sun grew hot, the remaining manna in the fields melted. On Friday, they gathered what they later discovered to be a double portion of bread, 2 omers for each person. The heads of the community came and reported it to Moshe, because Moshe had not yet informed them about the precept of Shabbat, which God had commanded him earlier to give over. He said to them, "This is what God said. Tomorrow is a rest day, a holy Shabbat to God. Bake whatever you wish to bake today, and cook whatever you wish to cook today. Whatever is left over, put aside for storage until morning." They put it away until the morning, as Moshe had commanded, and it did not become foul-smelling or worm-infested. Moshe said, "Eat it today, for today is a Shabbat to God. Today you will not find it in the field. 6 days you will gather it, but on Yom Kippur and festivals there will not be any." On the 7th day, some of the people went out to gather manna, but they did not find any. God said to Moshe, "How long will you refuse to observe my commandments and my teachings? You can see with your own eyes that God has given you the Sabbath because a miracle occurs on the Friday, and he gives you enough bread for 2 days. Let each person remain in his place. Nobody should leave his place on the 7th day." So the people rested on the 7th day. The house of Israel named it the food manna. It was round like coriander seed, but it was white. It tasted like dough fried in honey. Moshe said, "This is what God has commanded. A full omer of it should be stored away for generations to come, in order that they see the bread that I fed you in the desert when I took you out of the land of Egypt." Moshe said to Aaron, "Take an earthenware jug and put a full omer of manna into it. You should place it before the ark of God to be preserved for generations to come. As God had commanded Moshe, Aaron deposited it in front of the ark to be preserved. The children of Israel ate the manna for almost 40 years until they came to an inhabited land after crossing the Jordan. However, the manna only descended until they came to the plains of Moab, at the border of the land of Canaan, where Moshe passed away before they crossed the Jordan. After that, they ate from the manna which they had stored up on that day. The omer is 1/10 of an ephah. The whole community of the children of Israel journeyed from the desert of Sin, traveling according to God's instructions. They camped in Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink. The people quarreled with Moshe, and they said, "Give us water so that we can drink." Moshe said to them, "Why are you quarreling with me? Why are you trying to test God if he can give water in a dry land?" The people thirsted there for water. The people complained to Moshe and said, "Why have you brought us up from Egypt to make me and my children and my livestock die of thirst?" Moshe cried out to God, saying, "What shall I do for this people? If I wait a bit longer, they will stone me." God said to Moshe, "Pass before the people, and you will see that your words were unfounded, as they will not stone you. Bring with you some of the elders of Israel as witnesses, and take in your hand your staff, with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb. You shall strike into the rock and split it, and water will come out of it, and the people will drink." Moshe did so before the eyes of the elders of Israel. He named that place Massa Merivah, testing and quarreling, because of the children of Israel's quarreling, and because they tested God, saying, "Is God among us or not?" As a punishment for doubting God, the following occurred. Amalek came and fought with Israel in Rephidim. Moshe said to Joshua, "Choose strong and God-fearing men for us, and go out from the protection of the cloud of glory and fight against Amalek. Tomorrow during the battle, I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." Yehoshua followed Moshe's instruction to fight against Amalek. Moshe, Aaron, and Hur, Miriam's son, ascended to the top of the hill. It happened that when Moshe raised his hand, Israel would prevail, and when he lowered his hand, Amalek would prevail. Moshe's hands grew heavy because he was lax with his duty, discharging it to Joshua. Aaron and Hur took a stone and placed it under him, and he sat directly on it. Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one from this side and one from that side. His hands were spread heavenward in faith and prayer until sunset. Joshua weakened Amalek and his people by decapitating their key warriors with the edge of the sword, but he allowed the others to live. God said to Moshe, "Inscribe the story of how Amalek attacked Israel before all the other nations as a memorial in the book. Recite it in the ears of Yehoshua, who will bring the Jewish people into the land of Israel, because I will surely obliterate the remembrance of Amalek from beneath the heavens." Then Moshe built an altar and named it, "God is my miracle." He said, "For there is a hand on the throne of God, which swears that there shall be a war of God against Amalek from generation to generation." That's it. Parashat Beshalach. I forgot about that part about Amalek and the war at the end. And I think perhaps the most fascinating thing about this Parsha is imagining the jar of manna and wondering when we'll actually witness seeing that coming out of the reserves and where it's hidden. And that's extremely exciting and interesting to think about. But other than that, something I think about, I guess not just with this Parsha, but as we go through the book of Shemot, is really this theme of Mitzrayim and thinking about our personal Mitzrayim and what that means and what it means to be constricted and not free, and what we do to just journey through our own personal desert to get into that land of freedom. So that's the theme running in the back of my mind as I'm reading this book of Shemot. But I hope you enjoyed that Parsha reading. And hello, Christine and Trebson. Good Vok, Shabbat Tov. David, nice to see you. Hi, Isaac. I'm not going to read your name out loud. No, Homeboy, I could say that. Lindsay, nice to see you. Hi, Oscar. Very nice to see you guys. Have you climbed the steps of Haifa? I have not. I have not been to Haifa yet, so that's on the Israel bucket list at some point. I am going to hop off already because I have some other things to do now. Tuesday is a segula for Parnasa. I didn't know that. So that's nice to know. It's a good little, yeah, that's interesting. I never actually heard that before. So I know that Mondays and Thursdays are special days for fasting and praying for certain things, but I never knew that about Tuesday. So here's to having a happy Tuesday, and I'm wishing you guys all a Shabbat Tov and a happy, free and flowing and miraculous week ahead. See you guys later. Litra.